good morning to everybody out there. I'm very happy to start this second day of our virtual conference on why internationalization. And as we've just heard, the second day is supposed to bring forward the perspective of practitioners and academic policymakers. And I'm giving my very best to do this, and I'm also very much looking forward to learning about the different ambitions for international exchange at universities worldwide, and also about opportunities, challenges, which follow from realizing these ambitions. So I, for one, let's see whether the presentation works, would like to focus on one particular activity within the broad field of academic internationalization, and an activity that has become more important over the last, I would say, 5 years, namely strategic university partnerships. And in line with the overall conference topic, I would first like to ask, why do universities tend to establish such strategic partnerships with international universities? What benefits can be gained? What makes us at the University of Bonn, what makes universities worldwide engage in such partnerships? And the second issue I'd like to tackle here is, how do we need to adapt our strategic partnerships to the global changes, to the shifting global context which we currently experience? And we talked about this shifting global context a lot during the conference yesterday. So which challenges, which opportunities do we face when we aim at further developing these partnerships into the 2020s? So in order to illustrate my arguments, I will give you some examples with regard to our own partnership strategy here at the University of Bonn, and also on some recent developments of our strategic relations to international universities. And I will particularly speak about our partnership with the University of St. Andrews. And in this context, my talk, of course, mostly presents the German side of this story. And therefore, I'm also very happy that our partners, particularly from St. Andrews, have an active part in this conference here as well. Hello to them. And I'm very much looking forward to your adding to my contribution here, and to presenting your ambitions for our partnership. So I would like to start by juggling some ideas as to why universities build strategic partnerships. So which explicit and implicit rationales are behind this instrument? And before I do so, I very briefly introduce those of you who cannot be here with us today, unfortunately, to the University of Bonn. A very brief overview. So you see on the slide that we have approximately 38,000 students at the moment, 5,000 of which are international students. We offer approximately 200 degree courses on all levels of the academic education. 30 of our master programs are being taught in English, and we also have 10 international double degree programs. And I prepared one second slide on the University of Bonn, showing its research profile, and see that the research we are focusing on starts with mathematics, and then turns to physics and chemistry, life and health, and even covers questions from the humanities, individuals, institutions and societies, past worlds, and finally, questions of sustainability. So, and we at the University of Bonn adopted an explicit partnership strategy for the first time in 2018, so only 2 years ago. And among other things, we defined strategic partners within this partnership strategy. And currently, these are 3 partners, as you see on this slide here: the University of Melbourne in Australia, Waseda University in Tokyo, and, as I said, the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. So all these partnerships are based on very long-standing cooperation. And however, that we chose these universities as strategic partners was an interplay of at least 2 additional factors. So at first, most of these partnerships are based on currently particularly active scientific activities, joint scientific activities in at least one important research area. And second, there was a mutual interest of our university leaders, of the higher education institution management in increasing the collaboration on an institutional level. So our approach, University of Bonn approach to identify strategic partners does not stand alone. I did a very brief survey, and approximately 2/3 of the universities which are promoted in the top 100 list of the 2020 Times Higher Education World Universities ranking explicitly name strategic partners. And many of these strategic partnerships were only formed within the last years. So obviously, it seems to me that the attractiveness of such international academic partnerships is on the rise. And they're also sponsored by large public donors, for example, by the European Union within the Erasmus Plus program, and until very recently also by the DAAD in Germany, the German Academic Exchange Service. So now come to the question that I raised at the beginning. So what do universities expect from such strategic partnerships? So why do they elect each other as preeminent partners? So very generally, I find two lines of argument in favor of such partnerships. And these were also the considerations until recently here at the University of Bonn. So first, a strategic partnership is supposed to strengthen the position of both partners in the global competition for academic attention and resources. So it's three subpoints to this argument. Strategic partnerships increase the national and international visibility and reputation of a university, as this university profits from the visibility and reputation of the partner and vice versa. And second, the partnership supports the university's profile in research or teaching or any other profile area, as the university collaborates with an institution of similar or complementary profile. And third, this kind of partnership visibly or also even symbolically documents a distinct international orientation of a specific university and its global interconnectedness. Then there is a second compelling argument for strategic university partnerships, and this is that these partnerships are able to let universities efficiently handle their international academic relations. Again, three sub-arguments can be made here. So first, strategic partnerships help universities to spend their internationalization budgets efficiently by selecting between partners with regard to their strategic relevance. And second, they establish long-term structures and structures for international collaboration across different academic fields, and therefore they increase the efficiency of collaboration. And finally, through these well-established structures, these partnerships contribute to the success of joint third-party funding activities, particularly in research. So if we compare both lines of argument, which I mentioned here, with the general internationalization goals or rationales that were discussed yesterday, the question of academic, cultural, economic, political rationales, I see strategic partnerships mostly from the arguments which I just presented to nurture economic goals, which does of course not mean that strategic partnerships are simple fundraising instruments, something like that. So in most cases, strategic partnerships rather need a significant investment from the participating institutions. But however, in the end, they are very often directed towards the acquisition of revenue, at least indirectly. So what I do also not want to say is that strategic partnerships have no academic relevance. So on the contrary, most of these partnerships, as I said in the beginning, are established on long-term joint research activities in particular fields. And these activities are also supposed to work as a blueprint for other fields where new joint research activities are supposed to be established. Still, the reason for developing a strategic partnership from existing research collaborations is, as the name says, rather strategic than actual academic. So to sum this up, the rise of strategic partnership initiatives seems to me oriented towards global visibility and reputation, as well as to local resource allocation and efficiency in handling international partnerships. In this regard, such partnerships are an expression of the ever more market orientation, global competition for resources in the higher education sector. And this was also discussed a lot yesterday. And I think these partnerships are indeed, they document indeed the way in which the internationalization of higher education institutions have turned towards economic goals. And as you see, this is even true for countries like Germany, where universities are publicly funded and funded by taxes. And given the general proliferation of such strategic partnerships, they seem to be at least promising or even actually powerful instruments to reach the goals which I mentioned in the beginning. Which makes me come to my second point: strategic university partnerships in a shifting global context. And in this second part of my talk, I will deal with the opportunities and also the challenges for strategic university partnerships in the light of the changes that we currently experience in the context of international academic exchange. And it is probably widely consensual when I say that we experience our times as more unstable, fluid, sometimes disruptive than earlier years. And that we expect this tendency also to grow in the future. And we know from business, there has been coined the term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And this situation further contributes to the appeal of strategic university partnerships, I'd say. It's in a world of constant, sometimes sudden changes, international collaborations require trust. This was also mentioned yesterday, familiarity and reliability. And all these features are maybe something like a currency with which academic partnership can be made effective today. And stability is a very important feature of these partnerships. So, and at the same time, I would argue that the current global change processes create new framework conditions for international partnerships and international exchange. And in this regard, universities also face the challenge to make, and this would be my main argument of the talk here, the challenge to make even strategic partnerships more meaningful. And what do I mean with meaningful? I mean, I propose to orient these partnerships not only to these quasi-economic goals, which I mentioned, but also more and more towards social, political, and cultural goals as well. And particularly, one approach that I would like to discuss here is to explicitly involve these strategic partnerships in the interaction between academia and society, which becomes more and more important. So in my eyes, this meaningful reorientation is an adequate and a necessary reaction to a variety of present developments and trends. And I will come to these trends in a minute. And I also think very much that by acting this way, strategic partnerships will be more effective even in reaching their reputation-oriented goals. Okay. In order to become more explicit about what I mean, about what my argument is, I will now come to the final part of my talk and propose 3 new sub-goals for strategic partnerships, which all follow the aforementioned idea. And for each sub-goal, I will briefly illustrate how we are currently at least plan to approach this sub-goal in our strategic partnership with the University of St. Andrews. And please be aware that this is very much work in progress, and we have only taken the very first steps towards developing our partnership in this direction, which I will indicate now. So the first possible new goal, I do not want to say that all strategic partnerships have to be developed in the way that I will now indicate, but these are rather opportunities that I see for these partnerships to be developed, which also can take one or the other direction. So the first sub-goal would be create these partnerships for global solutions, I would call it. So since the corona pandemic hit us at the beginning of 2020, we have often heard that the importance of academic international exchange has gained ever more significance. And it came up during this conference as well. And like in other fields, I would say that the pandemic has more or less only reinforced and made visible processes that actually are not new. In this case, the circumstance that humanity faces several challenges, and climate change being one of them and the most prominent, perhaps, but by far not the only one. There are challenges which share one common pattern, and three aspects are important here. So these challenges first emerge due to globalization and the world's comprehensive interconnectedness. And second, they strike most parts of the world, although in different forms and severity. And third and finally, because of this, they can only be solved through a joint or at least harmonized endeavor. Or at least if they are solved in a harmonized endeavor, the solutions might be the most effective. So, and there's another thing to add to this, that the pandemic has highlighted the importance of research when it comes to understanding the underlying forces of such global challenges, to understand their development, their possible future progress, and also possible solutions, of course. So, and if this observation is correct, and I do believe it is, there is indeed a new and increased demand for global exchange and collaboration in academia. So in strategic university partnerships, I would say, provide the opportunity to tie up to these thoughts. By explicitly dedicating partnerships to research that is connected to the big social, political, technical challenges of our times, the partner universities can reach out to somehow new shores. I think they can develop their partnership not only in a transnational, but also a transdisciplinary direction, which also then might bring them additional new partners, also even beyond academia. And secondly, I would say that if they create a special academic and at the same time, let's call it social or globally responsible ambition for the partnership, they also provide the partnership with a distinct own profile. So the profile is not only that there are two partners which are strong in themselves, but the partnership has a certain, say, topic or ambition. And I am convinced that both aspects will probably make it easier to reach the reputation-oriented goals, as I said. And together with the University of St. Andrews, we're currently trying to align our partnership with some of the big questions of the present. So we plan a series of workshops together, which will start in this winter semester, where we want to bring together researchers in virtual roundtables, which deal with the major challenges of our time. So firstly, we'll start in November with a session on COVID-19 and researchers who do research into the pandemic from all different kinds of perspectives. And secondly, we will deal with the relationship between Europe and Africa early next year. And we also have another ambition in this context, which is learning from each other as institutions who try to develop themselves into more sustainable organizations. I think we can learn a lot from each other here as well. So there are several goals which we follow with this, as I call it, a bit emphatic partnership for global solutions, which is we want to increase the effects of our research on the important topics. We want to reach a greater academic and non-academic public for this research. We want to make this academic and non-academic public aware of our partnership, of course, and create visibility of our partnership. And finally, we also want to provide evidence to this public that international academic cooperation makes important contribution to our societies. I think this is all kind of a new approach towards what strategic university partnerships aim for. Here's my second proposal. Form anchors of science diplomacy. So this, the second sub-goal very much refers to the political role of strategic partnerships. And we've all witnessed that the geopolitical situation has changed over the last, I would again say, 5 years. Political economic disagreements between nations have become more intense. There are long-lasting international conflicts which have not yet come to an end. And on the other hand, we have formally relatively stable relations, which turns to conflict between the US and China, between the European Union and the UK, between Poland, Hungary, and Western Europe, to name but a few. And then we also notice that there are leaders of quite a few nations who express fundamental concerns against the idea of multilateralism and who take actions against the institutions of multilateralism, which has served as a kind of a fundament for international relations since World War II. So the whole geopolitical situation has become more intense. And in this context, I'd say that international academic exchange gains even a new political significance. And this is also true for strategic university partnerships. So understood as a subdomain of science diplomacy, these partnerships, let's say, contribute to maintain good relations between nations, even when these relations have turned more difficult or difficult on a political, sometimes on an economic level. We have shared questions, methodologies, research-related values, which unite researchers from most of the times, unite researchers from different cultures, and which bring together people from different systems. And what is more, and it's also a point that I find important, is that strategic university partnerships continuously produce examples for the mutual productivity of international collaboration. And they also kind of build a challenge for those who consider international relations as a win-lose game. So while this is until today mostly an implicit effect of academic partnerships, I do see an opportunity in explicitly fashioning this political dimension. And I would propose that strategic partners make science diplomacy an explicit sub-goal of the partnership and develop formats, say, to form a dialogue, or to enter into a dialogue with educational research or foreign politics, for example. You might, in this partnership, create links to civil society, to political, economic institutions which are concerned with the relation of the nations which are involved in these partnerships. And in other words, I think that strategic partnerships can become kind of a visible academic highlights for the friendship to be, again, a bit emphatic between two countries. And this is also true very, very cautiously a direction which we are at the moment taking in our partnership with St. Andrews, especially with the current situation around Brexit, and Sam Lister will go on and tell about this approach regarding Brexit this afternoon. So, for example, we have proposed our partnership to the local parliament in North Rhine-Westphalia as one role model for German-British or German-Scottish cooperation, even after Brexit. And we're now, right now, work together with regard to European institutions. So, and what we're trying to reach by doing so is to demonstrate the importance of German-British academic cooperation, and also to highlight our concerns about future partnership relations. And of course, we also again want to make visible our partnerships and the academic efforts within this partnership. And this brings me to my last point. Third possible new goal of a strategic partnership, which is build a hub for inclusive internationalization. And this starting point for this is my observation that at least in Bonn, but I think that is true, this is also something that applies to many other, at least German universities, that our traditional mobility programs have reached a limit in the level of participation. While the proportion of internationally mobile students has continued to rise until the mid of the 2010, it has remained largely constant since then, if it hasn't declined. And it's also true for the mobility of lecturers and staff, which is also stagnating at the moment. And we share this development with most German universities, as I said. And from here, I would conclude that obviously our exchange programs only reach a certain segment of students, while a larger proportion, at least 2/3, if not 70 to 80%, are not included in the international activities which we provide. And we have recognized this, and we aim to increase the Sorry, I think we do have a technical issue. I share my screen again. Can you see that? Wonderful. Sorry for that. I come back to my argument that what we're trying to do is to diversify the. Sorry, here's some confusion about the visibility of my presentation. Okay, it's visible. Thank you. So, as I said, what we're trying to do is to create more diversity among the students, among the staff, the lecturers, which we include in our international activities. And in future, I would also wish for strategic international partnerships to be hubs of this inclusion, and to form contact points in which many different groups from the participating universities can participate. So this also means, of course, that we need to radically diversify the formats through which these partnerships live. Because to be honest, most of the time we send delegations. Before Corona, of course, we sent delegations from one university to another, mostly consisting of highly ranked researchers in particular fields. So, and I think we definitely need to diversify this. We need to come up with short events and long-term exchange with personal, with hybrid, but above all, also with purely digital formats. And we need to include options for students, for early career researchers, for experienced researchers, for staff, and all of these groups together. So in the future, I think it will be the mix which will make up for the appeal, and also which will contribute to the intensity of a strategic university partnership. And again, in the partnership with St. Andrews, we're still very much at the beginning of reaching this goal. We started to include staff collaboration as a key component in the partnership. And we're also currently testing virtual staff exchange as an option of digital exchange for employees at our universities, for whom an actual stay abroad is not possible for whatever reasons. And it's our task. In the future, I also could mention that we established a digital language learning program for students in Bonn and St. Andrews, and they can form tandems online to learn each other's languages. And I think it's an important task for the future for us to further the diversity, in our strategic partnerships, and to include the partnership in our internationalization at home strategies, and thus also to use our structures that we established through these partnerships to enable new groups to gain an international experience. This brings me now to my conclusion. Oops, not yet. Sorry. So, and brings me back to the general questions of this conference. So, the question is: are the objectives, are the goals of strategic partnerships changing in this context of this what I just said? And my take in this would be: yes, of course, any academic exchange and even these partnerships continues to focus primarily on improving the quality of research and the quality of teaching. And of course, strategic university partnerships will also in future continue to improve the reputation of the institutions involved. And however, as higher education institutions, I would say that we should also assume the responsibility of shaping the interactions between academia and society. And we need to see this as an integral part of academic internationalization through academic contributions to the big political, social, technical challenges of our times, through contributing to the understanding between people, and also through opening up international perspectives for a diverse set of people. That would be my argument. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing this with you.